Dominic Zelenik says no max perceived girl boss niche audience. Movie tickets are too expensive. The sequel waited too long. And parents could not take their kids. Better movie idea. Dementis as the main character. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much there's just a lot there that that was just working against this movie, and it's just sad because I mean, for the most part, you know, you look at it as what was thrown up on the screen. It's a good movie, but now you throw in not only the trailer, the horribly made trailer, but also the state that the audience is in regarding movies today, and then also what the studios have been doing with stories as of recent. And the only way to save Hollywood is for Hollywood to realize that it needs to be saved and make intentional moves to save itself. And I don't know that they see that or want to do that.
I think they're apprehensive because the way Hollywood stays afloat is by bringing in fresh blood that knows and understands how to make connections with audiences. Right now, they've brought in a lot of people that understand story very well. Like, I know a lot of movies have sucked and people have complained about them. They're justified. But you have to remember that these people beat out thousands of other people that thought they knew story and didn't. Yeah. That is the sad, horrifying truth of Hollywood, because I've read tens of thousands of screenplays from professional writers and amateurs. And I'll tell you this, even the worst screenplay from a professional writer is infinitely better than the best thing from an amateur, because they just understand the basics far more intuitively, and they've done it for years. But guess what? You amateurs out there, you keep at it, you will get to that level eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I keep saying sometimes you need to go to the movies that you love and figure out why you loved it. You know, what was it? Was it the story? Was it the character? What drew you to it? And then put that in your movie. You know, I watched Doctor Who, this current season. I've never really watched Doctor Who, but I did notice that there was a concerted attempt to gain a new audience, but it was at the expense of the old audience. And then by trying to gain that new audience, I think that new audience realized how bad the show was and then turned that off. And so you've just killed your fan base, and you've not done anything really new or anything spectacular to bring in that fan base that you wanted to bring in, which to me, Doctor Who, this season of Doctor Who is a gay TV show.
Yes. I've not seen it. I left when Capaldi joined, not because of Capaldi. I actually love him, but I saw the pilot before it was aired. Well, my buddy was editing it, and I was revolted by it. And I would say this. So the biggest misunderstanding of modern day marketing is that they always look for a new market share to address. And instead of going at it inch by inch, which is what they should be doing, they just jump in the pool.
Yeah. It's like, we need to get this market, and so you make everything for that market, because they stupidly assume that the fan base that they grew over decades is going to show up anyways.
Well, it's not necessarily stupid. It's based on a pattern, because a lot of people that work on these franchises, they know when they have a piece of crap entry in their franchise, and yet it's still a successful. So that gives them the false input of like, oh, they'll watch anything so long as it's got this brand on it. And the audience kind of affirms that, but they can only affirm that so many times.
Yeah. Well, that's the prequel. That's the sequels. Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. That's where they blew it with the fans.
Yes.
Because they had an audience, the Force Awakens, they had an audience that was going to see the movie no matter what. And by the time Rise of Skywalker came along, that mentality went away.
Yeah, because number one, you had a little bit of oversaturation. You had Rogue One and then Solo, which both movies I felt you didn't need to do. And I despise Rogue One because it really ruins a cool aspect of what Star Wars was. But that's the thing, is you have to inch into new demographics slowly, carefully. And the reason you do it slowly and carefully is so that you can gauge the response. Oh, okay. So we understand that we want to appeal to, say, a homosexual audience. Well, are we sure that they're watching? Are we certain that they're not watching the show? And they never ask that question. That's one of the things I found with marketing, is that whenever they look at a new demographic, they don't ask the question, are we sure they're watching the show or not? And you always get someone coming in there pitching saying, oh yeah, Star Wars. Well, it's mostly men, so women don't watch it. It's like, no, women do watch it. Figure out what the percentage is, and then ask yourself, is that a good percentage? And if you want a higher percentage, why do you want that? And if you do want that, what of that demographic is appealed? Like, what does it appeal to that demographic? And how do you make that work for Star Wars and not Star Wars work for that, or any franchise work for that? Barbie did something absolutely brilliant, which is that they made Ken more entertaining than Barbie. And that appealed to the male audiences, which is why most men had no problems going to see Barbie, because they're like, I empathize with Ken. Ken is the main character of the Barbie movie. Yeah. He's the one that goes on the journey and the arc. Barbie does have her own, but it's a dark, satirical one where you don't want to live in that Barbie world. And they make fun of it quite easily on the front, because you have that Supreme Court scene. Mm-hmm. They're arguing for stuff. Who are they arguing against? Nobody. It's self-indulgent, it's communist, it's crappy, and it's horrifying. And that's the joke. And that's why I was like, and it's got this perspective of like, oh, it's like, how does the world function? How does an 8-year-old girl see the world? And then over the course of that movie, more reality is coming into, and it's causing that perspective to grow up. Mm-hmm. And then you find out, oh, Ken, he goes to the world, he realizes that men have a bit more attention, they have a bit more wealth, agency. He's like, oh, I'd like that. And then he goes to the worst area. He goes and finds all the terrible books of what it is to be a man, and then models that into Barbie. And it works out well for everyone to have fun and happy, but it's also a very horrible fantasy version of what
it really worked out overnight for everyone in Barbie land.
Yeah, but the thing is, it was also frighteningly, it was a mockery of what patriarchy is, and it hit both sides really well. And the thing is, like, again, if it was truly a woke film, it wouldn't have made over $1 billion, because we've already known, we've tested it rigorously, that woke movies do not make $1 billion at the box office.
Yeah,
audiences were smart enough to realize that, and the combination with Oppenheimer really just that was the audience doing that Barbenheimer thing. No marketing company came up with that, and that just shows you how inept
and
marketing.
And two studios benefit from it. That's
exactly
the more amazing thing. All right,
it did that well, because it's like, oh, we realize this is a female thing. We could target the females, but we already have a history of Barbie movies that have done that, and they performed decently well for what the budget was. We're going big studio. We need the male stuff. How do we do that? Well, let's make Ken the empathetic character of the story, because guys will relate to that, and then just try and throw in as many jokes as you can. And oddly enough, it worked.
Yeah, it's funny.
I don't think it's going to work again, but it worked once.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. If you ask the women in my life, they loved Ken. That was the movie for them. So it even worked that ways.